يا أيها الإخوة، لا تظنوا الجهاد أمرا يسيرا، فالجهاد صعب حتى على صفوة الناس من البشر. كتب عليكم القتال وهو كره لكم، يجادلونك في الحق بعدما تبين كأنما يساقون إلى الموت وهم ينظرون. فالجهاد صعب، الجهاد ثقيل على النفوس، ولكن إذا لم يكن من الموت بد فمن العجز أن تعيش جبانا. من للضحايا يواسي الجراح؟ من للعذارى يحمي أعراضهن؟ وكما قال ابن المبارك: كيف القرار وكيف يهدأ مسلم والمسلمات مع العدو المعتدي، القائلات إذا خشين فضيحة جهد المقالة ليتنا لم نولد. أي قيمة للحياة إذا رضينا أن نقعد مع الخوالف؟ رضوا بأن يكونوا مع الخوالف وطبع على قلوبهم فهم لا يعلمون. كتب القتل والقتال علينا، وعلى الغانيات جر الذيول. لا بد من أن تشرع على سنة، ولا بد أن تستل السيوف من أغمادها، ولا بد.
People are now dead in this Israel-Gaza war, over 36,000 injured. Now it is reported that 1.7 million Gazans are now displaced. And we have a lot to talk about. It's been quite a bit, about over a week since my last update. And here we go. Recap of the latest developments. Israel and Hamas complete initial prisoner captive exchange commitments ahead of a reported 2-day extension of a ceasefire. U.S. Defense Chief Lloyd Austin urges his Israeli counterpart, Yoav Gallant, to allow the delivery of more humanitarian aid to Gaza in a phone call where Austin also calls for state and non-state actors to avoid expanding the current conflict. Remember, the instigator here is not just Hamas, but it's also the Israeli government, and has been going on for the last 76 years. Let's not forget this. It's the reason for the attack by Hamas. Hamas didn't just basically spawn out of nowhere and decide to attack Israel for no apparent reason. The action is in the reaction. Why is there a Hamas or a Hezbollah to begin with? It's not that I'm looking past what Hamas has done, what Hezbollah has done, but they are just a nemesis, a reaction of a response. And the response is 76 years of oppression. Let's get right to it. More captives are freed as Israel and Hamas agree to extend their truce in Gaza. This is NPR. Another 11 Israeli hostages were freed by Hamas on Monday as Israel prepared to release more Palestinian prisoners in another swap under a temporary ceasefire deal. The latest exchange came on the same day that the two sides agreed to extend the truce, which was set to expire. An elite unit of the Israeli military and its domestic security service are now escorting the 11 abductees, the Israeli military said in a statement. After undergoing an initial assessment of their medical condition, our forces will accompany the returnees until they reach their families in the hospitals. Pop up. All 11 captives were seized from the same kibbutz community known as Nir Oz, near the Gaza border, during Hamas' October 7th attack on Israel. Around 240 hostages were taken, about 1,200 people killed in the attack, Israel says. Some of the released on Monday have dual French, German, and Argentinian citizenship. These are Jews from another country that were imported to live on Israeli settlements. Now, look, kibbutz are basically illegal settlements. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm not saying that these people should be killed or should be kidnapped and tortured, because violence begets violence. End of story. Not advocating for what Hamas has done. I can understand why they did what they did, in the same way that I can understand why Hezbollah does what it does. But what I can't understand is why Israel does what it does. Why is it that when we talk about Hamas and when we talk about Hezbollah, or we talk about the Palestinian Islamic Jihad or any other Islamist group, we must never talk about what precipitated, why they're doing it in the first place? Why are they attacking U.S. or Israel? It has nothing to do about religion. Nothing. And because these groups are not pious, they pretend to be religiously oriented, but they're not for the religion itself. Because when you read the Quran and you go to Al-Madinah, whoever kills one life, it's as if he kills mankind. Isn't that what they teach in monotheism? So if they teach this and the overall message is love, because that's the underlying message in monotheism, then the groups that were spawned from a vitriolic view of Western imperialism the message of any Islamic fundamentalist group is not about love. It's about destroying Western imperialism. But the victims are almost always citizens, innocents. In the same way that when the U.S. goes to war in a country like Iraq, 99% of those killed were citizens. 1% were the Ba'athist regime, and it's less than that. In this case, Hamas killed citizens and the military. But when you turn it around and you look at how many people were killed so far by Israel, it's now over 15,000. This is a catastrophe right across the board. How many of those are Hamas? And I would say that the percentage is the same as, say, how many Ba'athists were killed in the U.S. invasion of Iraq. 99.9%. The percentages belong with Hamas. At least they killed more, on percentage-wise, they killed more military than Israel has killed Hamas, percentage-wise. Have they killed any Hamas? I'm pretty sure they have. But to them, you would think that everybody is Hamas. All 15,000. That's what Israel would like you to believe. They want you to believe that these people either Hamas affiliated or Hamas themselves. Every hospital is Hamas affiliated. Every school is Hamas affiliated. And it makes you wonder, it's almost like anti-Semitism. You question the Israeli government, you're an anti-Semite. You question the validity of the Holocaust, you're an anti-Semite. Israel has a right to exist. And it keeps repeating that narrative. But guess what? It starts losing its luster each and every time you use it. You can't use a get out of jail free card when you're not in jail. But when you're a perpetual victim or you play it, and the reality shows that you're a perpetual instigator. So when this article states that some of those released on Monday have dual citizenship between French, German, and Argentinian citizenship, that means these are Jews that were born in these countries, but have a relationship with Israel. And they can actually have residency. And what they do is the Israeli government, under pressure from the international community, like the International Center for the Red Cross or Amnesty International, the international criminal courts, they'll basically say, listen, you're committing war crimes. You're committing illegal activity regarding the displacement of Palestinians, destroying their land, destroying their homes, and replacing it with Israeli settler ones. And what they do is you have Christian evangelical churches in this country, the United States, like John Hagee and Hagee Ministries, that advocate. They want their own parishioners to pay for the relocation of Israelis anywhere around the world back to Israel. Because what the evangelical Christians want is a return of Christ. And that can only happen with the Battle of Megiddo. This is what quasi-religious thinking they do. The Israelis and their quasi-religion need for every Israeli to come back to Israel so they could rebuild the third temple and brings about the Mashiach, where they can enslave, and which is what they believe they can enslave 500 Gentiles in heaven. It's amazing that we have this very morbid and strange relationship between Israel and the United States when, if you take a look at the religions, they couldn't be any more polar opposites. It's almost like we need each other to basically bring about this strange fascination for global death so that we could benefit in the hereafter. This is what Israel thinks. This is what the United States thinks. I'm talking about, the religious part. When you look at Islam, they have more in common with Christianity than you do with Judaism, for example. But yet you would think that with this similarity in religions, there would be a more understanding. But yet on the political aspect, or the geopolitical view, they're mortal enemies. And when you look at the Wahhabi faith, which is not Islamic, they look at the sister religion, Shia, Islam, and they see an enemy. They look at the Yahud, or the Jew, and they see an enemy. They look at the United States, they see the Christian, they see an enemy. Right? But you ask the majority of Muslims around the world, they don't see it that way. The Shias don't. The Alawites don't. The rest of the Sunni population don't. But the Christian evangelical will see more eye to eye with Zionist Israel. And they'll consider the religious Jew too liberal. Because one thing that they have in common is Zionist Israel and evangelical Christianity is their ardent nationalism. A caliphate, if you will, just like Wahhabism. They believe in a caliphate. And that's what Israel is trying to do here, the Israeli government, secular as they are. They believe that Israel should be a Jewish state on the face of it. The religious part of Israel believe in a Jewish state, but they could live with Palestinians. Very unorthodox view of Israel. The news this evening brings a sigh of relief to our community. However, we remain deeply concerned about our loved ones that are still held hostage, says Omrat Pearl, the head of the kibbutz. We demand the return of all hostages immediately, whatever it takes. Pearl said out of the hostages still held, 49 are from near Oz, including women, men, children, mothers, fathers, grandfathers, and grandmothers. It's ironic that these people want the return of hostages, but yet they are more than willing to destroy or see the displacement of men, women, and children as long as they are Palestinian. It's funny how it works this way. Now, I'm not advocating for the hostage taking of settlers by Hamas. It benefits no one. It doesn't benefit the Palestinians. It doesn't benefit the Israelis. It doesn't benefit anybody. But what are the Palestinians to do? No one's running to their defense. The United States doesn't give a shit. Neither does Saudi Arabia in the Gulf. Oh, they'll use the Palestinians as a leverage stone. For example, the United States and Saudi Arabia, when they talk about a future oil deal or a future project deal, Saudi Arabia will basically say to the United States government, to the Biden administration, maybe, we're giving you millions of dollars through our lobby, through relief organizations, through lawyers and law firms or other corporations. They don't have an actual physical lobby like Israel does. So they don't really interfere with electoral affairs, but they persuade them. Now Israel does, because they got their own lobby. Saudi Arabia knows that they have really nothing in common with the United States. So that's why they'd rather work in the shadows. But they persuade American politics through money, because this is what it's about when it comes to politics, because everybody in federal government, when it comes to Congress, they're all sellouts, every single one of them, no matter who it is. Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. They're all prostitutes, whores, every single last one of them. I consider them the enemy, because they don't serve in the interests of people, nor even do they even try. But they'll listen to money. That's why Saudi Arabia pours in millions of dollars, tens of millions. And they'll go to the leverage table and say, you know what? In order for this project to work with the United States benefits, maybe we should bring up the Palestinian issue. But when it comes to receiving refugees, not so much. Egypt is the same way. Later Monday, Israel released Palestinian prisoners as part of its end of the deal. The Associated Press reported a bus with prisoners arrived in the West Bank city of Ramallah, Qatar, which is mediating these deals, posted on Twitter earlier that Israel would release 33 prisoners, including 30 minors and 3 women. White House grapples with internal divisions on Israel-Gaza because the White House is not totally pro-Israel. And I'm willing to say that those in the Defense Department basically are a little bit more hesitant, whereas those in the State Department are pro-Israel. It's usually the case. One thing about the Pentagon is they know how much power they have. They know that Israel depends on them. Then the State Department, they acquiesce. Pentagon's a little bit more stubborn. Earlier this month, a group of about 20 distressed White House staffers requested a meeting with President Biden's top advisors as Israel war in Gaza entered its 6th week. The pressure is on. Listen, I'm making a total on prediction. Biden lost the presidency. He's dead in the water. He just doesn't know it. Maybe he does. Because the longer this goes on, it's worse off for him. Even the Democrats are protesting in favor of the Palestinians. And it's the writing is on the wall. We're getting a Republican president next year. It's either Trump or DeSantis. It's one of them. There is no Democratic nominee. They're finished. The diverse group of staffers had 3 main issues they wanted to discuss with White House Chief of Staff Jeff Zients, Senior Advisor Anita Dunn, and Deputy National Security Advisor John Feiner. They wanted to know the administration's strategy for curbing the number of civilian deaths, the message it plans to send to the conflict, and its post-war vision for the region. Zients, Dunn, and Feiner listed respectively, but some participants felt they fell back on familiar talking points, said a White House official familiar with the meeting who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss a private exchange. The administration had to be careful not to criticize Israel in public so it could influence its leaders in private, the advisors said. because it's almost suicide to criticize Israel when it comes to the State Department. You criticize Israel, you're no longer a part of Congress. End of story. That's how powerful the lobby is. U.S. officials were pushing Israel to minimize civilian casualties, and the president and his top aides were advocating for a two-state solution once the conflict was over. The previously unreported meeting of officials underscores how Biden's handling of what is arguably the biggest foreign policy crisis for his presidency is dividing a White House that has prided itself on running a disciplined and united operation. The Israel-Gaza war has roiled the administration more than any other issue in Biden's first 3 years in office, according to numerous aides and allies inside and outside the White House, as staffers agonize over their positions on highly emotional issues. These are not domestic issues, by the way, where it can easily be explained, and this is where a union comes in when it comes to the State Department. The death toll is 15,000, and it's really hurting the Biden administration. And like I said in previous videos, the longer this war goes on, the worse off it becomes for Biden, because the pressure is on by the international theater. Hey, it's not on Israel, it's the United States, because they know the power comes with them. Pressure Israel to put a stop to this. Israel's not going to listen to anyone but the United States. But will they? Will they? Is the arrogance on Netanyahu so great that he can even say, fuck him? And I'm pretty sure he thinks that way anyway. When you take a look at his own cabinet, the most racist, the most nationalist government Israel's ever had in their history. So when you look at it from that perspective, Israel doesn't give a shit. But they might if the U.S. pressure is enormous enough. Elon Musk tells Netanyahu the war that he wants to help rebuild Gaza after war. Elon Musk told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu Monday he wants to help rebuild Gaza after the end of the Israel-Hamas war. Musk is in Israel to meet with officials and see sites that Hamas targeted in its October 7th attack. The trip comes as he faces fallout for backing an anti-Semitic post on Twitter early this month, resulting in an exodus of major advertisers. Now, look, Elon Musk is somebody I really don't care for. You know, I don't necessarily loathe him or hate him. I just think he's really not important. I just don't think so. Much like with any billionaire, like Jeff Bezos or anybody else for that matter, they just, or Warren Buffett, I don't care. They're very uninteresting people, for the exception that they want to feel that they are important. They have a lot of money. What we do, take away their money and see how much they're worth to the world and to others. You don't judge a man by his bank account. You judge him by his character, his integrity. We judge them by their bank account. We would see Elon Musk as worldly renowned, but we don't. They have no comparison to the rest of the world, and the rest of the world is in poverty. What do they care about a billionaire? And what does he care about them? Elon Musk is in Israel, and I remember when Israel basically rebuffed his issue as want to build Starlink to give electricity to the Palestinians in Gaza City when Israel cut off the electricity. And Israel said, no, we're not going to do that because it'll help Hamas, of course. It's always Hamas. So Elon Musk was pretty critical. And because he's such a huge public figure, they invited him to Israel, and he went. And I'm pretty sure that Netanyahu is basically kissing his feet, so to speak. Wants him to believe that that he needs him. Israel doesn't need him. They just need to, to better have a better view of Israel through media, because he is the owner of Twitter, and he's the largest stakeholder, and he's also a very popular person, which brings about a lot of media attention. And Israel is losing the media war. And their propaganda is at a loss. No one's believing the bullshit that they're selling about Hamas. No, nobody. They're lying through their own teeth. They remind me of Al-Qaeda in the 90s through their media committee or the media arm, As-Sahab, where they used propaganda. The one thing that they excelled, what they learned from the Afghans in the Afghan war in the Soviet Union in 1979. Bin Laden was a genius in that way, where he saw the benefits of propaganda, the benefits of using the media to influence the minds of Arabs in the fight or the jihad against the Soviets and later on the United States and the West. It worked because they grew in the mid-1990s when they returned back to Afghanistan in 96. After 1996, according to Ann Stevenson in her book, Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, and through Mustafa Hamid, through his book, Arabs at War, and these are the leading experts in the world on Al-Qaeda, that when they returned to Afghanistan, they saw a jump in membership. And it came from propaganda videos. Well, Israel sees the same way, how to influence the public consciousness when it comes to this conflict. And it's like they really have to push up the propaganda because the results of the conflict are egregious. 1.7 million displaced, 36,000 injured, 15,000 dead. My God, these are greater numbers than what's going on in Ukraine. They now exceeded the Yemen crisis, and that was the biggest humanitarian crisis in the world. So, of course, they're going to be welcoming Elon Musk to the country. And Elon Musk is pretty critical of the Israeli government. I wonder how he's going to be now. Well, that waits to be seen. Now, the occupied West Bank, the other front. Now, this is the growing war. This is really a worry because now we're talking about Lebanon. We're talking about Hezbollah. There's hardly any factions of Hamas in the West Bank because they're basically from Gaza and Qatar. The leadership in Qatar, the low-ranking membership in Gaza. But this is Hezbollah territory and the Israeli settlers' territory, and they're basically fighting against Palestinians. And the rise of Palestinians' settler violence is growing. Shared stories of violence and forcible displacement of Palestinians in the occupied West Bank as the war in Gaza rages. Since Israel began the bombardment of the Gaza Strip on October 7th, violence has also surged in the occupied West Bank to unprecedented levels. More than 2,000 Palestinians have been arrested, and almost 200 have been killed in the last month alone. Scores have been arrested, beaten, and tortured, fueling concerns that this could erupt into a second front as Israel pushes on in their stated objective to access and control Palestinian territory. And this is what it's all about. It's not about the elimination of Hamas only. It's about taking land from Palestinians and giving it to Israeli settlers in order to bring more Jews back to Israel from France, from Germany, the United States, Australia, Canada, no matter where. You could thank the evangelical Christian community, John Hagee Ministries, Benny Hinn, Kenneth Copeland, and the likes of those ghouls, and of course, the Israeli government. Constant overnight raids carried out by Israeli military forces have seen families throughout the occupied West Bank forcibly removed from their homes. Within this complex mosaic of hillside cities, farms, Israeli settlements, and army checkpoints that split up Palestinian communities, settlers have become empowered to act with further impunity. Israeli settlers are equivalent to the Islamic State in that they share so much in common regarding their quasi-religious mindset. Israeli settlers believe that in order for the Mashiach to return, they need all the Israelis back to the land of Israel. The Islamic State wants to expand the caliphate because what they want is basically a return back to the Crusader Islamic wars. The shooting, killing, and intimidation of Palestinians in the streets in their homes is nothing new. They have been under the threat and pressure of military and settler violence for years. The legal phrase that describes these actions is creating a coercive environment so that the Palestinians will leave on their own volition and eventually collapse under this ongoing pressure. Now look, ladies and gentlemen, you know, this only ends when the United States says enough and pressures the Israeli government to stop. But that can only happen when there's a unified front at the Biden administration that basically says, all right, this is hurting our presidency for next year. We need to stop Biden. I think he's too old. He can't afford it. But he also may be seeing the writing on the wall. Maybe the administration can't be saved. It's too late. They dropped too many points. And there's no turning back. So you might as well go full in. But at the same time, those in that administration, the State Department, are basically going to jump ship. And that's exactly what's happening. Now, on the Israeli side, it's full steam ahead. Let's go to West Bank. And who knows, maybe we'll engage Hezbollah, and this will force the United States to become involved. Like I said, we'll wait for that to be seen. This is all a waiting game. At the same time, can they really afford a wider regional war? Israel can't, but they don't give a shit because they got the United States to back and fall on. But if they see that Biden administration is weak and that they can't, well, then they really can't force that issue, can they? Because they don't fight on their own. Because the Israeli military, no matter how good you think they are, they suck. They're weak and inept. They can't fight a guerrilla war. What makes you think they could fight a regional war? They lost to Hezbollah in 2006. And what makes you think they could beat Hezbollah now? Not much less beating Jordan or Iran at this point. In their dreams, can you think they could beat Iran on the battlefield? The United States knows this. They know that Iran is a formidable military army. And this is the reason why you see such hesitancy in the United States in conducting military operations against Iran. Not everybody's on self-suicide or self-martyrdom for Israel. So all hope is not lost. And we need more people to speak out on it. And I'm imploring you to basically to do your part, to use your voice. And if you think that you lack the courage of your convictions in regards to maybe doing a video, well, write an article. Do something constructive. And if you think your voice is not important enough, that's not true. You know, I used to think that way for many years prior to me opening Viral Media. And, you know, there's no such thing as too little, too late. It's better late than never. Your voice counts. And the State Department and those in the Pentagon, those in the intelligence services, those in corporate media, and those with private military industrial complex and private corporations, they want you to believe that you're nothing, that you're powerless. When the reality is you're powerful. Your voice carries so much weight because it carries much more weight when there's another, and there's another, and there's hundreds, and then there's thousands, and soon there's millions. Jim Morrison wrote 5-1, and one of the lyrics is, they got the guns, but we got the numbers. And the numbers count because they can't kill us all. Because we have love on our side and empathy. The one part of the human condition that the government doesn't understand because they speak in the language of violence, because they're apathetic. Same goes for the Israeli government and the Saudi government. They only know violence. They can't understand empathy. And that's why they excel in war. So your voice does count. And we need it now more than ever. And as always, with every update, I will report without prejudice and without bias. And I will always report with the latest updates as long as I can. And see you in the next video, guys. Have a good night.